recording. So just give a few minutes for everybody to come on. You're all very welcome. Just people are joining in there at the minute. Certainly getting a lot colder out there at the moment. Christmas must be coming.
It is indeed. Need to be wrapped up. It's coming very fast, Paul, isn't it?
It is indeed, yeah, definitely. Yeah, no doubt about it. And the weeks just seem to be melting into each other. Actually, this is our fourth Brexit webinar. As you know, Deirdre and Seamus, you've been great supports of the Chamber for the last three as well. And they just seem to melt into each other. But there seems to be some genuinely new news today compared to the other three that we had. There's some changes anyway, some announcements. We'll cover that off, I'm sure. Okay. Well, I'll just kick off here just with a little bit of an introduction, if I can, before we get started. The countdown to Brexit, that's to this afternoon's webinar. And my name is Paul Clancy. I'm CEO of the Chamber in Derry. And we're delighted that so many of us could join us today. Just a little bit on the event overview. You would have received this in advance, but this is the fourth webinar of the Chamber's Countdown to Brexit series. And our expert panel assessed the state of play. Are the negotiations out of the tunnel? Is it a deal or no deal, a skinny deal? Have they resolved the Northern Ireland Protocol? Have the diggers started on the border control post building sites yet? And this week should tell the tale. And I mean, we have some things to discuss, obviously, with the announcements today. Our expert panelists, Deirdre Maguire of Intertrade Ireland, Seamus Lihney of Logistics UK, have provided solid advice and critical information to help support Northwest businesses through the countdown to Brexit. And thanks so much to Deirdre and for Seamus for their continued support. And we're joined today by Aidan Connolly, Aon Connolly, and Northern Ireland Retail Consortium to discuss the realities of this week's decision making and its effect on the cross-border trade. So hopefully we can add some more additional details to what's happening out there. Do we know more about the timings of what's going to happen, what the effect the announcements have today on product choice and affordability? And yes, will we be able to answer the big question, will the British sausage be available in Belfast or closer to home for Derry? Will it'll be Danish pastries or Devon lamb? That seems to be catching a lot of people's imagination at the minute. But just wondering, just in terms of the announcements there, what's your interpretation of them? Maybe Aidan, I could come to you first. The announcement by Mr. Gove, by Minister Gove, or Chancellor Gove yesterday evening and now today as well. What do you think is?
So we got a bit of a heads up of what would be in Gove's speech today, and actually I got a copy of the speech, so I could quickly run through it. What I want to do is just to give you an idea of what is in there and what else we actually know. So in the speech, if you cut through all of the waffle, which is about 3/4 of it, what we can actually find is some decent enough stuff on tariffs. Now, what they've said is that traders, about 98% of traders, will not have tariffs put on their goods. There will be a new system, a new trusted trader system, which will allow people to not have to pay goods. For those 2% of people that do have to pay tariffs on those goods, there will be a system to get a rebate on them if they are not going into the Republic of Ireland. Now, that is good, and it genuinely does remove one friction and does remove one cost. So we can't really argue with that. That is very acceptable. So it is. As well as that, we're also looking at additional flexibilities for supermarket supplies. Now, we don't know how wide that is going to be, whether it's going to be convenience stores or just big supermarkets, and we're really pushing to get not only more detail, but to make sure that that is as wide as possible. That's why there is going to be a grace period for supermarkets to update their procedures. That means that they will have 3 months to get that they won't need EHCs, those export health certificates, which are hugely expensive, about £200 per time at the greatest level. And really, if you're talking about a consolidated or mixed load, you're really talking maybe up to about 1,500 of those. So you're talking about tens of thousands of pounds. So again, that is good news. Bad news is it's only for 3 months, and we need to see whether that can be teased out a bit longer. There is that our P&R list, the protected and restricted list, or prohibited and restricted list, and that's the one about the British sausages and whether or not they will come in. And there is good news for the British sausage. They will be able to come in, but they will only be able to come in for 6 months. That will be reviewed at the end of 6 months. And if there is a skew or an orienting of the supply chain away from GB and it's not needed anymore, then that could end, or it could be agreed that it goes further. The deal also protects the flow of medicines and veterinary medicines into Northern Ireland for about 12 months. So those are some really good commitments, but it also leaves a lot of questions. For example, although there won't be tariffs, will we still need to be doing customs declarations? Those are those 10-digit, 13-digit, also customs codes that are needed. Will we need merchant codes, those things that you need if you're bringing in branded goods? Will the EHCs, those export health certificates, still be needed for P&R? Now, they don't exist, so we're looking at sort of, can we get a pragmatic approach? And then how do people sign up for the trusted trader system? The other side of things is these are all sort of short-term day one fixes. And the concern that I have is that it allows the EU and the UK to say, well, look, the world didn't fall apart on the 1st of January. But if it's 3 or 6 months down the line, how do we continue to get long-term, feasible, workable solutions that keep costs down for Northern Ireland consumers and that keep Northern Ireland business competitive?
But isn't that it, Aidan, really? At the end of the day, it's about like the customer choice and the cost of products that are going to land on the shelf. I mean, Northern Ireland can't afford, consumers cannot afford a price increase. As you've mentioned many times as well, the margin that a lot of supermarkets and chains work on is very small. I mean, there might be this, people think there is a huge margin, there isn't, and we know that that's a fact. So how is this going to play out for the consumer, do you think?
Well, you're absolutely right in everything you say. So the Northern Ireland consumer has about half the discretionary income of Great British households, and they have about £215 a week left over when all the big bills are paid. We have somewhere around 118, and now that's the average. There are a lot of families a lot worse than that. That is going to drop next quarter once all of the furlough stuff and those people have been living on 80% of their wages comes into play as well. So what you're really talking about is an inability for consumers here to absorb that. And that's also reflected in the retail industry. For about 5 years there, up to Q4 2018, we had the supermarket wars, I hate that term, but it's because of competition. Very, very quickly, it was unprecedented, really. You went from supermarkets having about 5% profit margin to around 2% margin. Now, the other side of things is because of the extra cost that there's been in preparing for Brexit. Last year, that grand old Duke of York stuff, we marched to the top of the hill and marched back down again. And then through COVID this year as well, the rest of the profit margin is almost gone. Some of the big guys at the moment, over the first sort of 2 or 3 months of the pandemic, we're operating at 1% or less profit margin. Now, retail is high volume, low profit margin, always has been, always will be. However, that sort of cushion does not allow for things like customs. Great that we don't have tariffs. That would have been a deal breaker for a lot of them, because you're talking 43% on mince, 57% on cheddar, that sort of thing. So that would have been awful. But we still need to work out. We still need to get the fine detail of this to see if the new costs are higher than the profit margin. If the new costs are higher than the profit margin, either the product or the business model becomes unviable.
But Aidan, there was some debate here that they were saying that the offending clause that were taken out of the Internal Markets Bill was more looking to the US and the US-UK trade agreement as opposed to trying to get to a free trade agreement. What do you think? Does what has the announcement yesterday ease the way to a free trade agreement? Do you think? Does it increase the probability? Because it depends who you talk to. Some people say yes, this helps it. Some people say actually it's still quite negative.
We always thought that this would happen, that this would happen after a free trade agreement, that the Northern Ireland stuff would happen after, because neither side wanted to do the leverage stuff with Northern Ireland. You could always use Northern Ireland. Oh, well, if you want that, we want this sort of thing. And it was quite a surprise. I was genuinely surprised when this happened. Now, there's a sort of smacking of it. It's as if two kids Ivesas to get in, and they do it the night before and quickly get it out of the road, so they continue thinking about football. And that's kind of what's happened here. It allows them to move forward. But on one side, and I suppose I'm being pragmatic, but I'm also being slightly optimistic. For me, the fact that I've been talking to the European Union and saw that the UK internal market bill eroded that trust in 24 hours. 6 months trust was gone in 24 hours. So for me, it was a very tangible step that they were trying to rebuild trust between the two bodies, and that we were closer to it. Now, the other side is that this is a parachute, in that if there is no FTA, at least the provisions that are joint, the Northern Ireland Protocol still stands, the withdrawal agreement still stands, and these provisions still stand. So at least we have that parachute. But there's no, an FTA is more than just about the customs. An FTA is a legal framework on which you pin other things. So this can be a bare bones and only zero customs or zero tariffs, zero quota FTA. But in a few years' time, you look at things like veterinary agreements, which would remove the need for checks down to 1%, 7 lorries a day. And that is how it works. If you look at the precedent with the EU, the biggest one is, I always use, Switzerland. There's 210 pieces of legislation that underpin that relationship that they have, and that's been built over 40 years. If you look at the EFTA or even the EEA stuff and the Norway stuff, that started out with one data sharing and one tariff agreement that they did, and that has been molded and grown. Now, it's not the same as being members, but because there is a legal framework and a governance framework there, you can do more with it. And that's really my sort of hope, and what we have pushed back to Michael Gove and to the Europeans today is, great that you've made this progress. What are you giving us next? And that's what business is going to continue to do in Northern Ireland.
So would you say from yourself, are you more positive that there could be a free trade agreement now?
I'm always positive, but then again, I take really strong antidepressants. No, I would tend to think that this is more close to an FTA. Now, there's two things could happen. Firstly, it could be an FTA in this next few days. Secondly, they could take Christmas to go away, and that means there's going to be a little bit of pain over January in GB, and then maybe come back to it, but they will not be starting. The biggest thing is if they walk away with a bad relationship, someone throws a head up, and then have to start all over again, because that is where the real danger is here, because there are enough people in Parliament, and a few in the European Parliament as well, who would like to see the world burn. So this is where we always feared this would get to. This is now based on the politics, not on the technical process.
But you must be very happy though, because you have been going on about the trusted trader agreement for so many times now, that it must be great to feel that at least is over the line. I'm
an Armagh man, we're never happy. What do you call it? the way that this is about trying to get the best deal for Northern Ireland consumers, and that means removing frictions, that means removing cost, and that means making sure that there's choice and availability. What's been offered and what we've seen now, we need to get the detail of it, but that doesn't do it, so we'll continue to fight on. Yeah, thanks, Aidan, for that. Just moving on to Seamus there, from your perspective, I mean, a lot of the things I'm sure you would concur with what Aidan has said there, but any particular thing from the logistics point of view, or your view on the situation we are at the moment? Is there any more clarity for movement of product as well, north, south?
Yeah, well, Paul, thanks for having me today. And I've learned one thing this year: don't go after Aidan on a webinar, because you're left with very little to say after it. He's covered everything. But I'll tell you, I would agree to the point. Yeah, I think it's a good sign with regards to getting a free trade agreement. Push that door, because a trade agreement was going to be impossible unless the protocol was implemented and respected by the UK. That was a red line for the EU. So it's a very positive sign, but of course there's still a few things we could trip up on yet, but we're working there. The trusted trader scheme, most of the freight that comes in here is for retail. You can't get away with that. It's about between 65-70% by value. And we've long called for, like Aidan's organisation, as a trusted trader scheme for those retail goods coming in. And yeah, I think the announcement in the last 24 hours, there's some positives and some negatives to it. I think the positive is, yes, it's great that 98% of businesses, that there will be no tariff, and that's fantastic. although we had hoped as part of a trusted trader scheme that also your regulatory standards, we've called in part of that. So, you would have systems in place and traceability where taking food in, for example, you could get soft touch SPS controls, export health certificates, etc. That seems to have been the part of the compromise between the UK and the EU, that they've separated the tariff schedule from obviously the regulatory standards. And, deals is all about compromise. So, we got some of what we wanted, but it looks like, when that period of grace runs out between the 3 to 6 month period, is that we are going to be left with these new controls on food. And what I would worry about come 6 months' time is that we approach yet another cliff edge where we've potentially the supply of a lot of food coming in here being turned off if there's not some type of agreement met to simplify that going forward,
Yeah, no, Seamus, thanks very much for that. Just I forgot to mention at the start there, for anybody who's anybody watching in now this afternoon, please feel free to put a question in the box, in the text box at the bottom of your screen there, and we can put those questions to our panelists today. So apologies for that. I forgot to mention that at the start. Seamus, you had mentioned before on a couple of calls, this is an opportunity. We could be in the sweet spot, I heard it described as yesterday, because we have the unfettered access to GB, and we also have effectively unfettered access to the EU as well, which is a massive market. So for Northern Ireland perspective, there's got to be very positive reasons to be, for positivity. Let's go with that way.
Yeah, definitely. I've certainly spoken to a lot of businesses in the last couple of weeks who are trading with the EU, and where they're thinking about, they're looking at opportunities as well, where there's maybe manufacturers of similar products, maybe in GB, who are supplying customers in the Netherlands or Germany, and they're now seeing that they can supply those clients in Europe, on the continent, but with the reassurance of continuity of trade, that there will be no tariffs, no regulatory controls on their products, because we have to remember we've got this unfettered access with the EU. So if I'm a producer of goods in the Northwest, I can send my goods to Europe with no tariffs and no regulatory controls, that unfettered access, which competitors in GB won't have, and with minimal fuss. If you're going to move those products via GB, you simply you raise a transit document, and that's basically, that transit document acts like a passport for those goods going through GB. It's just telling HMRC it's not staying there, and then when it arrives into France, it's telling the French customs, listen, there's no customs required on this product, or no tariff, because it came from within the single market as such, with Northern Ireland will be part of. So that's fantastic. That's a great advantage that we will have, and I think it's something that'll be built on over the years, and probably something that people like, Intertrade Ireland, Invest NI will really be keen to promote as well.
Well, maybe that's the perfect opening for Deirdre to come in there. You've been sitting patiently there, Deirdre. Thanks so much, and thanks again for your support for the Chamber over the last three sessions that we had with you as well. And we were briefly chatting yesterday that the pace of requests and for information has really ramped up exponentially recently, and I guess businesses now are really, okay, there's COVID there, but now they know Brexit is very much there. And you were going to share some of I think your website and some digital supports that are available. So if you want to share that, or do you want to give a little update?
Just give the context first, Paul, if that's okay. So look, like everybody else, it's great to actually have the update today, because it really helps me as well. We're getting so many questions in from businesses, cross-border traders who are worried about their supply chains. And so welcome any news that makes that anywhere easier. What it appears to me is that there will be time-based sort of phasing in. That's what it's looking like. And so just it was mentioned there, we don't want to be sitting every time something is at the end of the phase out in a no deal position. So I guess for businesses who are listening, obviously I probably sound like a broken record at this stage, but don't lose your focus, because you're still going to need your data. That data is really, really important. So you're still going to need to know what your product is, and in order to do that, you're going to need to know what your commodity code is for a start. So just to focus on that one thing, and to put that into some context, I quickly wanted to show you, if you were a business and you didn't have that code, your supplier was giving you a code and you weren't sure if it was right, where you go to start to get it. Okay, so very, very quickly, we have a website which has just recently been, the content's been there, but we've just sort of reshaped it a little bit. And we've got trade and goods, trade and services. We've lots of information here about people, common travel area, EU settlement scheme, frontier workers, all of that good stuff. And I'll come to the funding kind of nearly in a moment or two. But I just wanted to go into the trade in goods. And within that, there are lots of guides, okay, for a small business who really gets a moment and wants to go in and sort of learn a little bit more. So we do have, we're not at rules of origin stage yet, but potentially I hope we may be, but there is something there on Incoterms, and again, another one there on commodity codes. And if your business does want to go in, this will take you through what a code looks like, how many digits it have, where to actually start to look for it, why you need it, why it's important to get it right. And there's an example there where there's the 6 digits, which is the common identifier. And if you go down, then there's little videos which shows you how to search for them. And at the very, very end, you've got the links that will take you into both the European tariff database and the global tariff for the European Union, or for UK. So that's just one thing, which I'm going to stop sharing, that a business could do today. And that I would be saying, with all of the information, there's going to be a lot of it coming out very fast and very quickly. But my advice today would be, don't lose your focus, and just make sure that you're starting to get ready here, because this is the reality. It's actually really happening. And the other thing, finally, just to mention, which is a big part of what we do, is the funding. So for any businesses who haven't applied, if you're a cross-border trader, and potentially that could be, you know, part of your supply chain, the Intertrade Ireland supports are there to help as well.
Brilliant, Deirdre. Thanks so much for that. Aidan, just going back to one of the issues, the level playing field, do you feel that's the one, or is it fisheries? I mean, what are you hearing? Or is it
well, I suppose last week we had more jobs put at risk, double the jobs put at risk in the retail sector in the UK than there is in the whole of the fishing sector in the UK. And I think we need a bit of perspective on this. Yes, it is highly symbolic. I think though, where when they're going back and forth and they're talking about individual species of fish this late in the day, then it's not helpful. Now, my sources in Europe say that it's not as big of a sticking point as the LPF and the governance. And a lot of this is more than just semantics. These are trade fundamentals, and people are saying, why can't we get just a trade deal because we're on the same standards? That's fine, but you still need to have legal frameworks in place, so that and who adjudicates those standards, and what happens if there's divergence, and all these things need to happen. And that's why I always said that trading negotiations are a blood sport. You know, it's not tea and sandwiches. It is a blood sport. And other people are saying, well, you know, if you could do it with Japan and North Korea, yeah. The Japanese trade deal took 17 years from start to finish. The actual trade negotiations themselves were 4.5. South Korea took 4 years, 9 months, and then had another 2 years of a provisional implementation before full implementation. So there's, you know, trying to do all of this is breakneck speed. You have to remember as well that we could not start negotiating fully on this trade deal until the 6th of January this year, because up until then it was we were still members of the European Union. We weren't a third country, and we were still working out the withdrawal agreement. So, you know, this is all really breakneck speed to get this done. I have grave concerns about whatever does come out, and you know, they're sitting at the moment at about 1,800 pages. I swear, over this past 6 months, I've read more law books and legal text than I did when I was studying the bloody thing. But myself and William Bain from the BRC are going to be turning through that FTA. So, level playing field, governance are the biggest things. Fisheries isn't going to be as big as we think it is, but there is a symbolism here that. Especially for Boris's own party and his home audience, he has to be shown to be flexing, his sovereignty of the UK. But you got to remember, You're a member of NATO, you are pooling your sovereignty. You're a member of the United Nations, you are pooling your sovereignty. You have any trade deal, should there be a current continuity or other, you are pooling your sovereignty in one way or another. The thing is, how much do you give and what do you get in return?
Yeah. Okay. Look, questions come in here. Actually, maybe I'll try and deal with it now. You're talking about trade and retail, which we are. What about services and international education? The recognition of mutual recognition of professional services. I mean, is that one battened down yet? You know, I mean, that's part of what needs to be agreed, I think.
Yeah, that Paul, probably, like, I know in our transport side of things, the professional qualifications is that, and this would affect, like, you know, haulage and coach sector and things, but the Irish Republic have said obviously the EU won't recognise a lot of UK qualifications from January 1st. So in the instance down south, is that the Minister for Transport down there, Hildegard Naughton, said in the Dáil last week that if you are working for a Southern Irish company, is that you can't swap. They will do a straight swap with that qualification. They will issue an Irish equivalent for that, which was welcome in our industry. But the thing is, the UK have said they will recognise an EU qualification for a period of time, but it's open-ended. They may recognise it for 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years. So that's the fear with some people, is that some people may well swap their qualification because they use it north-south, but the clock's ticking about how long they can use it here. So I know from my point of view, it's something I've raised with the Department for Infrastructure because transport's devolved here. I'd like to see if you have a qualification, UK or Irish, that you can use it on both jurisdictions.
Thanks, Seamus. I'll just go on and say, because there's a couple of other points in this question here. For example, Northern Ireland will still be involved in European programs such as Horizon 2020 and Erasmus. I don't know, Aidan, so you're knocking your head there. I wonder.
Yeah, so there's that is one of the things that has been worked on. So that there's already a certain amount of funding that's going to still be available for that. How long that lasts? So it's the same as when the Irish asked about the European health card. That would be used, and there is a certain amount of those that are there. There is a certain amount of leeway that can be done unilaterally by Ireland. There's a certain amount that the EU has already agreed to, but as far as anything further than that, there is within the protocol itself, there is certain things that can be discussed at the North-South Ministerial Council and the North-South bodies. There's the joint committee that can look at further derogations and further mitigations, and that's why we have said that this is a good baseline, but we still need to get more and more from it, and we will be looking more and more from it. But in the wider sort of stuff, you know, if you're in GB and you're asking these questions, the answer is no. But because of the specialised position of Northern Ireland, there is an agreement now that these things will continue in the short term. Whether or not that is feasible in the long term, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think this comes on to this UK visa nationals such as Chinese students travelling back and forth from Donegal to Derry quite freely. Can they fly into Dublin, drive up to Derry? Do they need transit visas, for example?
That I don't know.
That I don't know. And what is the impact?
We'll have
to come back to that individual there who asked that question. And what is the impact in education and tourism in Northern Ireland and the island of Ireland? Well, at the moment, I think there's freedom of movement between the students, as I understand now. But I mean, that's something we'd need to dig in and get more detail.
Well, the Department for the Economy have a webinar tomorrow on all things people. So if I can get you the link to that, it's tomorrow afternoon. Yeah, you'll get an answer on their session on that.
Yeah, please, if anybody else would like to ask a question, please go ahead there. Just in terms of, just conscious of the time there, just in terms of Boris and Ursula now sitting around the table, do you think they're going to get this deal done? And do you think it's going to be over a glass of wine?
I don't know. What I do know is that if you remember, including yourselves, we all signed that statement the other day that we wrote out. So it ended up that there was 34 organisations that did that, and thank you very much, Paul, for becoming involved in that. And I suppose we should thank Seamus too, like, but we managed to do that and to put that into perspective. And this is how much this means to everybody. Usually it takes you about 5-6 days doing things like that, and everybody will hum and ha and all that sort of thing. We were on a Northern Ireland Business Brexit Working Group call started at 2. That came into the conversation about quarter to 2. We finished at 10 quarter to 3, sorry. It's finished at 10 to 3, and that statement went out at 5:05, and we managed to get 34 groups signed up to it, and that absolutely blew me away how much people were involved with it. But the returns were very, very quick. Michael Gove read it. We know that. FM and DFM were straight on. Not only did they get a copy, but they rang Gove about it. The Taoiseach saw it, noticed it, and brought it up with President von der Leyen in a phone call. And she was already aware of it. I didn't know that part of the story until earlier on. She had already been.
Aidan, could you just outline the 2 or 3 key steps that are on that, just for anybody who may not have seen it?
So if you haven't seen that, the first one is that we need the deal. We need this free trade agreement because it does remove that customs friction. It also gives that sort of framework for building a better relationship. The second thing we need is under the Northern Ireland Protocol, which are solutions that work and that are long-term and feasible. Now, we have solutions. Today, we need to find out whether they are long-term and whether they are workable for business and communities. And then the last thing is an implementation period. Now, we do not have as wide of a grace period as we would like, and we're still going to keep fighting for that, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, so the other thing that really sort of shocked me was that well, we got wonderful press coverage. In fact, we got more press coverage in the EU about it than we did in the UK. French, Italian, Danish papers all covered it, brilliant, and Irish, of course. But the one that totally blew me away is that we sent it to the States, and the Biden transition team got in contact with us, and they said they cannot do anything officially with us at the moment until they're in power, that sort of thing. But they actually asked for more information, so we were able to send them that 82 questions paper that the Brexit working group did, and send them some other information as well. So the one thing that you can take from this is people like Deirdre and Paul and James and myself have worked very hard this past few years on this, and it doesn't end come the 1st of January, that we'll continue to do that. There's lots of things to do with Europe, there's lots of things to do with the UK government, there's lots of things to do with the Irish government, and with the new administration in the States. You know, that's going to be another way of us to explain our concerns and hopefully get some support. So it's going to be a busy another few years anyway.
Okay, good stuff, good stuff. Seamus, just on the EU monitoring, you know, the monitoring they were talking about in that statement today, that I think they're going to have hot desks in Belfast. They're not necessarily going to be down at the ports, not going to have any physical, the EU contingent are not going to be physically checking anything. I think they're looking at data. Is that my understanding of it? So they're not going to be offices.
Yeah, probably, you know, I think it's probably a wise call by the EU. I think maybe going and have a flagship building in the middle of Belfast city centre with their flags out of it. I honestly don't think now is the time to be doing that. Red rag top bull, possibly in the future. So what we've been told is that there'll be 15 staff from the EU, and they'll work on a rotating basis. So you'll have some staff will come from wherever, Netherlands, Dublin, France, wherever. They'll come here for a term, a bit like going to work on an oil rig. We're a bit more, Northern Ireland's got a bit more than that. But these staff will work mobile. So there'll be the border control posts at Larne, Belfast, Warren Point, and at the airports. And they can just rotate around there, and they will be able to supervise. So they'll be looking over the shoulder of the DERA officials who will be carrying out the SPS checks, and they'll just be making sure that, yeah, okay, what's been done has been done correctly and in accordance with the Northern Ireland Protocol.
And is there a review, something like after 3.5 years or something by the EU prior to the Northern Ireland review? Am I reading that correctly, Aidan?
Yeah, so that's that's on the customs piece, that trading scheme, which means that 98% of traders won't have tariffs. That will be so we have a vote in 3 years and 4 years time, and in 3 years, 6 months time, we will have a review on the customs procedures and on some of the other procedures. There's a review after every 6 months on what's going on, and the joint committee will meet a few times a year, so that will be ongoing. One of the big things that we're going to be asking for is that now you have a baseline on that, can we please have more access to the joint committee and the specialised committee? But the 3 year, 6 month one on this customs is going to be particularly important.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Aidan. Just a question that came in then. If a product is manufactured, I think, is it in the EU, transports to NI via GB port, will duties or tariffs apply?
Through transit.
No, so their supplier on the continent raises what's called a T2 transit document, and that will pass through basically unfettered through GB, no customs required, no tariffs. It should be straightforward apart from just, but if you do ship direct, so some people are looking at this where they're using the land bridge, but they're thinking, can I make it even less friction without needing a transit document? You could ship by ferry to Rosslare or Dublin from the continent, or ship by a container to Belfast.
And there are new routes opened as well, aren't they, from Rosslare to France?
Rosslare to Cherbourg, and also Rosslare, a new service starting to Dunkirk.
And
that's going to be a daily service.
And I believe that there are more frequent ferries as well from the UK to Northern Ireland as well. Am I right on that? More. They've increased the ferries.
The services, the ferry companies are just going to look at it. They can increase availability and capacity if they see maybe a switch. Maybe if they see less people using Dublin Holyhead, for example, is that maybe they could move a ship from Dublin up to Belfast or Larne if need be. Because the problem is that the ferry companies and usually politicians say there's no problem with capacity on the ferries, but that's a kind of a flawed argument, because they're incorporating capacity on the afternoon ferries, which are empty. Nobody wants. Everyone wants the nighttime sailings, and the nighttime sailings are pretty full as they are already.
Okay. Just another question: is there any update on heat-treated pallets from NI to GB? What's a heat-treated pallet?
Heat-treated pallet is once you are moving from EU to EU, they have a certain standard for your pallets. Once you are third country going into EU, you need a heat-treated pallet, and those heat-treated pallets are more expensive. It's different between £6 and I think it's £12.50 now for a heat-treated pallet. Basically, it's an extra insurance that there will be no creepy crawlies or things that go bump in the night hiding in the pallets. You do not need them NI to GB. You do need them GB to NI. However, the cyclical nature of our supply chains here, you're going to get them mixed up, so that there's going to be a move over the next sort of couple of years towards heat-treated pallets throughout, I think.
Okay, look, thank you very much. I'm coming down to the end of it now. I don't have any more questions there. And just anything else, Deirdre, you'd like to add there at this point?
No, I have seen something on Twitter today about the heat-treated ones. John Campbell maybe it was, but anyway, no, just get your codes, get your data, get your invoice templates ready, the waste of your product, your packing lists, and start to just get ready for customs if you have any GB trade. So.
Yeah, there's one question in there, Deirdre. Is there a contact within your office that could assist with specific questions around transport routings and tariffs?
Brexit@intertradeireland.com. We are getting a lot of specific questions and we can't answer them all, but we'll do our best to give you some kind of an answer. So Brexit@intertradeireland.com.
Brilliant. Well, look, we'll put that on our recording when we send it out along with the questions here. And if there are any of the questions that we didn't get to today, if anybody would like to send them in, we'll do our best now to get them answered for you. Aidan or Seamus, would you like to add anything else now before you go on to your next webinar together? Probably, would there be the fourth one? Have you another one, by the way? Have you another one today?
You do, yeah.
You want the same one?
Yeah.
I mean, you were on the news last night as well. I mean, you got your makeup off and everything. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's really, I can't wait for the weekend. Seamus, you doing anything? Do you want to go for a walk at the weekend?
I see Aidan more at Revel now than my wife and children.
Okay.
Bad state of affairs. Okay,
maybe on that, as they say, Jerry would say, on that bombshell, we might sign off. Look, just a quick word I'd like to thanking everyone for their participation today. On behalf of our chamber, I'd like to thank Deirdre, Seamus and Aidan for their expert advice and support during these challenging times. And as I said earlier, if you have any further queries or questions that may not be covered today, please forward them to myself or Anna, and we'll we'll do our level best to get back to you with the information you need. So we greatly appreciate your continued support of the Chamber, and thanks so much for joining us today. So
Paul.
yeah, look, thanks again, guys. It's been great. And as you said, it's only the start of a journey. I think we're not near at the end of it. There's a bit more to do here, I think. So
Okay,
thanks again for your support.
no problem.
Bye.
No problem.
Bye now.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.